This is Art Talk with April, an artist podcast where we meet artists from all around the southeastern states and around the world. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Welcome to Art Talk with April. Today we have Merrilee Challiss, and myself and Merrilee have been trying to get on an interview. It seems like forever, but we're finally here. And how did you get started being a creative person? Is this something that you've been doing since you were little, or did you go to school? Are you self-taught?
All of the above. I was a creative child, the
Yeah.
typical weirdo, quiet, introverted child. And I learned that I could draw,
Yeah.
and that sort of gave me cachet in
Yeah.
elementary school.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the first way I figured out that I could interface with the world,
Mhm.
and present something that was valuable to others. So kids would
Sure.
ask me to draw cards for them and draw their, homework pictures. And I was sort of that kid in the class who would get asked to draw people things. And
Oh, that's so
I
cool.
remember in third grade, I was at a beach with my parents, and there was a sand drawing contest. And I
Oh.
drew a giant lion in the sand, and I won the
Oh.
sand drawing contest. And so that was a big early affirmation, of the power of
Yeah.
art, and, I just have never stopped. I did go to art school, and, I ended up getting a graduate degree too, and, but also I don't think that my institutional training was able to unteach the self-taught part of me.
Oh, that's good.
Um,
Yeah.
it didn't beat it out of me per se.
Yeah.
It did, kind of give me other things to think about and other approaches and different techniques and all of that. But, it's a balance between
Yeah.
what you learn. And then, of course, you go to graduate school and they break you down, and then you unlearn everything you learned and then relearn. So, that process of continually
Yeah.
learning and unlearning and changing and building has always been part of my creative process.
Oh, wow. That's so cool that you say that, because I've spoken with different artists, and there was kind of a feeling of like, and I'm sure every place is different at every like bachelor's programs different, but kind of, being steered in a certain direction with their art or their, like their style or their voice or something like that. And you don't feel like that happened with you. You just kind of took in the information and it helped you
I
with your.
feel like part of my creative process was the resistance of that
Oh,
in a way, um, if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of the DIY aesthetic,
Mm,
counter to like a traditional institutional learning.
yeah,
So I have this other canon of DIY and sort of
sure.
punk rock aesthetic and figuring it out, in addition to this other, more,
Yeah,
organized, higher ed, um,
sure.
academic, uh, I guess you would say, view of artistic training.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I draw from both of them. They're both very valuable wells of information that I draw from. So, I'm grateful to all the experience that I've had,
Yeah.
um, in all of those different capacities. I'm grateful for the learning. I think I always learn more from peers. I feel like peers have a lot to teach. When you're seeing other people go through those experiences, it's just so valuable, and to be going through it with other people. So that peer learning was very important to me when I was in school also.
Wow, that's a good point too. I haven't ever, I mean, like, I think I realized that that is happening, when you have like artists, peers, and people that you're kind of around or colleagues or besties that you're like around and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm doing this or they're doing that or whatever. And it probably affects what I'm doing as well. But I hadn't really thought about that. That's such a good point.
Yeah, yeah, because it's very unusual where you have people that are like a group of people that are dedicated to their creative practice. You
Yeah.
know, that's that container of school is a very unusual laboratory,
Yeah,
to
it
be a
really
part of,
is.
but it's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's experimenting and kind
Mhm.
of learning off of each other. That's
And
really
maybe more open, right, that they would
yeah.
be, if they were in their professional practice and
Sure.
figured out ways of doing things. So I love the liminality of those times and spaces in my life,
Yeah.
um, where the boundaries are kind of dissolved and not so, secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. I think too, so when you're working, like, okay, let's say you just got out of school or I don't know if you did your graduate program right after bachelor's, but like
Didn't.
when you first got out of bachelor's degree, what were your intentions? Where were you trying to go with your creativity?
When I graduated from college, I bought a one-way ticket to Europe.
Wow.
And I was engaged to be married, and he broke up with me over the phone. He was
Oh,
from Austria. And so I was
no.
determined to go and find a job. And so I moved to Prague and I got a job in 3 days. So I moved from Alabama to this very dynamic cultural melting pot, which was
Yeah.
the mid 90s in Prague, Czechoslovakia. And so I was living there in a kind of hedonistic, also a very liminal time, that, liminal time before it was after the fall of communism. And it was
Sure.
before they were really cracking down on foreign people like me and young people that had moved from all over the world to go live in Prague during that time. So
Yeah.
um, I got involved in the arts there and started an expat group, an art group with another person, and we started having shows in
Wow.
Prague. So after college, that was, also a very unusual experience.
Yeah,
So I
imagine
met
so.
other artists that lived there, and I was just working in a cafe. I had odd jobs, but it was so cheap to live there. So I was
Wow.
attracted to those sort of bohemian enclaves that were like historically important in the arts, and was attracted to Prague because of the history of alchemy and magic, and also the revolutionary aspect of it after communism. So it was just an exciting
Mm.
place to be. So yeah, that's an unusual
Oh,
post
wow. And how
college
long were you
journey.
there?
I lived there for almost 2 years.
Okay. Wow, that's a good bit.
And we would go to the border and get our passport stamped, and then we'd be good for another 6 months. And it was cheap, and we all just had weird odd jobs living there. And I could speak German, so I worked in a cafe, and I could take
Wow.
orders in German and French and Czech. I took Czech language, and
Wow,
but
how
yeah, it was
fun
a
is
very
that?
interesting experience. There were a lot of cool artists living there, and it was
Yeah.
I think, a very like, I don't know, just like a beautiful alchemy of um, different kinds of people like thrown
Yeah.
together in this mix. It was fascinating.
Yeah, I imagine so. That is really interesting. And so, like, when you left there, where did you go next? And did that affect, like, what you were doing as far as your artwork? Having
Um,
there?
yeah. So when I came back to the United States, I started working at Studio by the Tracks, which is where I work now.
Yeah, okay.
3 decades later. So
Yeah.
that's been another sort of through line. I keep coming back to Studio by the Tracks,
Awesome.
which is a nonprofit that I work for. So then I started working for a nonprofit arts organization.
Mm.
So there's been the one thing that's kind of been consistent is art,
Yeah.
in whatever capacity, whether it's working in a nonprofit's art space, or then I
Mhm.
created my own business, co-created a business that was sort of arts adjacent, arts focused. So that's always been kind of a consistent thing throughout my life is some kind of attachment. Whether, I've had a lot of odd jobs, but a lot of them have been art related.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Hmm.
So what exactly is your artistic vision or your style in your work, and what mediums do you use?
Sure. I was curated into an exhibition maybe about 8, 10 years ago. And the term esoteric art was used to sort
Mm.
of frame the artists who had been curated into the show. And that
Yeah,
really resonated with me, that term. I fit in more with that paradigm, I
yeah.
think. So in my particular um, artistic vision, I'm literally, um, I believe that art is magic and that art
Mm,
is alchemy, and that when we make a piece of art, we are literally concretizing some immaterial spiritual thing and making it manifest on this plane. And so I take it very literally. Like I think we take for granted, artists take for granted the fact that something exists in our brain and then we
yeah,
make it real. And that to me is mind blowing that, first of all, that humans can do that. And
sure.
that capacity is, I think it's underrated because I feel like as the arts continue to be cut and maligned, we're
Yeah.
forgetting about the fact that the arts are really a human superpower and creativity is a human superpower. And so I feel like my role as an artist is to kind of bring that alchemizing energy into my process. And I literally am trying to channel energy from the divine realm and make it manifest into the material realm. So I
Yeah.
take that, I think it's a spiritual practice.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my take on it.
Wow. And I mean, I could completely agree with you. I think that, especially in today's society with the generative AI coming about and everything, there's sort of like, I think one of the things that really bothered me about generative AI was, you know, it felt like something that is it spiritual or is it human was just sort of like tossing human magic aside. And that for me was like, um, heartbreaking, just
Mhm,
absolutely heartbreaking. Like,
mhm.
holy cow, all these people are so excited about this just taking over creativity. Do they not care about human creativity? Like, is it that worthless to them?
Right. Yeah. But I do think that in our contemporary society, we are in great danger of, well, as Douglas Rushkoff says it and Gary Lockman says it, we are offloading our creativity to these technological tools. And
Yeah.
that's not what was supposed to happen. I mean, the thing
No.
about humans that makes us unique is our creativity. And I don't think that we should cede that
Yeah.
to anything that's technological. And certainly, I think all of us thought that AI and the robots were supposed to alleviate human work and do our dishes and our laundry and not be
Exactly.
writing the poems and making the paintings. It's backwards because we're still doing all of our chores. So I think that the promise of this AI is, while it's really about expedience, and some of it is cool, but there's just it's hugely problematic in terms of the environmental footprint
Sure.
um, and also maybe to the human project.
Yeah. I just felt like it was such a disrespect. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's like, wow, all of this all of these people are just like they really don't see the value in human creativity. Now, since all of that has come about, I do kind of feel like at the same time that people are valuing it more, you know? Like there's some part of it that's like, okay, this is cheap. This is push a button and it spits it out, and I didn't want that. Or like if I find out, like, this is what someone else told me, like if they find out that they've bought something and it was created with AI, then they feel like they've been cheated, you
Mhm,
know.
mhm.
Like it's super cheap or worthless now. And so that gave me a little bit of hope, like, okay, maybe people do value that magical creativity, that humans are capable of, I
Hope
mean,
so.
yeah,
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, the trend is not going in that, it seems to be going in the opposite direction. With
yeah,
all of the
yeah.
arts being canceled and all the,
Oh man.
you know,
And
schools.
did the studio buy the tracks? Did you guys just you lose some funding as
Yes,
well?
we had a grant that was funded through the NEA and the regional arts organizations
Mm,
through South Arts, and it was called Arts Here.
mm,
And we had a very prestigious multi-year capacity building grant to help us double our youth program.
yeah,
And that, with all the other NEA grants from Arts Here, were just terminated, full stop. And it's heartbreaking.
yeah. Oh my
It's
God.
heartbreaking, especially when you see what the priorities are being supported for to use all of our money.
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And I've been thinking a lot about the arts and our culture, and why are we here, and how are we here, and how is this happening? And
Mhm.
I think that there's some aspect to it is that we receive the arts and aesthetics, and we consume arts and aesthetics somewhat passively.
Mm.
Um, music is on in every store. We receive it, and it's just in the
Mm.
air. Every space that we go into might have a painting or mural or some kind of aesthetic.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
shirts that we wear, the design of our jewelry and our clothes, it's all embedded in a
Yeah.
way that I think it makes it easier for us to take the arts for granted, because
Mm.
you think about art and design too, and the functionality of things, and the way things, you really only notice things when they kind of go wrong, right? So there's all this like passive, uh, I just think, aesthetics and culture that we're receiving, and that plays into our notion that somehow arts are just everywhere and we don't have to pay for them. Um,
Yeah.
which is, I think, something we have to continually point out as to why the arts are important and need to be protected. And if you look at even neuroscience and the way artists and artistic thinking, and artists as problem solvers, and even using your hand
Mm.
in writing and taking notes helps you create neurons in your brain that help you
Yeah.
remember that information. Like there's so many
Yeah.
benefits to the arts and drawing and all of that is like scientifically, valid, and it's just all being ignored. And I think that that's also part of why the offloading of our creativity to AI is, it's almost like it's like an inevitable apologist argument. It's like, well,
Mm.
there's not art in schools anymore, but look, we have this shiny tool that can just create anything you need, and you just click a button, have
Yeah.
it. So there's this idea that maybe it's not needed because this other thing exists that was created that can
Yeah.
generate your images. So I mean, there's a lot of tangled, layered arguments in those ideas, but I think there's something there to unpack, and I
Definitely.
think it's
Definitely.
deeply, deeply disturbing
Yeah.
to see the arts maligned in the way that they are right now in our culture.
Oh, I like you said a lot there. I really feel like, I mean, it I have felt the same way. I've been thinking about like our existence and the meaning of making art, and like what it's done for me and a lot of other people, it's very healing and it's like therapeutical, spiritual,
Mhm,
and all of these things are so, I mean, it's something that brings us together. It gives us another way to communicate with each other on a deeper level. I mean, there are all these different things, and I'm like, are my children going to know about this
mhm.
in 20 years time? Like, are they going, like, is it going to be non-existent? Because if it is, that is super scary and very concerning, I mean, it's like that is a huge part of, I feel like, being human. But of course, I'm a lifetime artist, as you are, and I kind of feel like, okay, do I have like a, bias towards it? Am I making it more important than it actually is? And I don't think I am.
No, no, it's just been maligned culturally, and that's why we're having these conversations now. I mean, I think we're all if you apply I mean, artists are problem solvers. We're great creative thinkers, and you can apply that to any discipline. And if you can
Sure.
teach people to be more creative in whatever discipline they're in, that's
Yeah.
gonna make them, better to adapt to this crazy changing future. So I think it's just gotten it's like the substance of the arts have gotten lost in the argument, which
Mm.
has unfortunately become cultural and culturally, politically a hot potato issue. Um, but it's foundational. I mean, if you look at ancient history, all of the temples and all of the
Mhm.
artifacts, everybody was engaged in some kind of artistic production in service of some greater good, greater whole, and
Mhm.
that's our history. And people like I don't know what it is about us that we take it for granted. Like unless
Yeah.
you're buying an album, unless you're buying a painting, you're receiving everything visually or sensorially passively. Some
Yeah.
you know. Um
Oh, that's so interesting that you point that out because I remember, like, I'm a graphic designer, and when I got my degree, my parents were like, okay, like, and how are you gonna get a job? Like, who hires graphics? Like, they didn't have any clue what it was,
mm-hmm.
how it was applicable to anything, and I mean, we're talking about, like, you know, rural Alabama in the, 90s, 2000s.
Yeah,
You're like, what is that?
yeah, same. Yeah, yeah. I've been fighting, for that to be able to say this is important and this is why I'm doing this my whole life.
And it's like, it's everywhere. Do you not notice all this stuff around you that's been, like, created?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I just want to mention this because this is a very powerful argument in favor of the arts. And this is there's a guy named Douglas Rushkoff who has a podcast called Team Human.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's a very smart guy. He's a digital media theorist and a futurist. And
Oh,
he interviewed the founder of Wired magazine,
yeah.
that covers all things tech.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, "Well, what are you telling your" they both have children. "What are you telling your children to study in school?" And
Yeah.
the founder of Wired magazine said, "Tell your children to study art." He said, "Do not tell them to study computer programming because AI is going to do that. Don't study."
Wow.
He said, "If you teach if your kids study art, they learn how to problem solve, which will position them in this economy to be able to pivot because artists are
Mhm.
self-starters. We teach ourselves new things all the time
Yeah.
and we become magicians." And so, I think that the arts as a discipline to be studied and majored in has been maligned by our parents' generations.
Sure, sure.
And it was so profoundly validating to hear this man and who
Holy
owns a tech
cow.
magazine to say, no, arts are the most valuable thing to study for young
Yeah.
people because it's going to really teach them how to have those critical thinking skills and problem solving skills where they can go and adapt and learn to whatever jobs are in the workforce at the time. So
Yeah.
I think all of my study in art has served me well. Like it really, I mean, they really are like alchemical magician skills that you can
Yeah.
apply to
Yeah.
any discipline. So I don't, I think that's a very validating argument for
I
why we,
love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Holy
yeah, yeah,
cow. I've got to look up that podcast
yeah.
too.
I'll send it
Sounds
to you.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
will. Yeah.
Um, it's, when you say that and I think about it, I'm thinking, I mean, it helps you, like you said, solve problems, but you're also like continually learning and experimenting, and you think
Mhm,
about things on a deeper level, meanings of things, how things are connected. And I
mhm.
mean, that's not something you can just get anywhere,
No,
and
no.
it's such a human process to kind of, you know, make these sort of, it's almost like these networking connections of things in life,
Mhm.
that you're kind of processing and making sense of. And then there's like these aha moments where you're like, oh, why don't we have this in existence? Or why aren't we doing this instead of that? That kind of making our lives better, basically,
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, that's amazing. So like, we kind of went off on a tangent there. But like, what kind of work are you making now? And do you have like I'm imagining you're having like a spiritual practice around it in order to make the things that you make. And then
Mhm.
are you working in like a series, or what is your process there?
Oh, okay. So I have a full-time job. So the art making process is fractured for me time
Yeah.
wise because I might have 20 minutes here, an hour
Yeah.
there. Um, and so that's a challenge. And so that
Sure.
I think right now is frustrating and limiting to me in the scope of the work that I can see in my
Yeah.
head and that I want to make, and I'm not able
Yeah.
to right now. Um, I do work in a series. I have many tentacles. So
Mhm.
imagine an octopus.
Yeah.
So one of my tentacles is I will make the same thing over and over again
Ah,
for
okay.
decades, and that's eyes.
Yeah.
Eyes is one of the symbols that I return to again and again and again. And so those are in a series, and I also like to, the work that I'm making now, I think is really about. I'm thinking the two-dimensional paintings. I like to use gouache,
Yeah.
and I'm really investigating the archetypes, like the goddess archetype and the divine feminine
Oh,
archetype. So I feel like I'm working with and through some of these archetypes,
yeah.
and sort of connecting, um, and bringing forth
Mm.
ancient energies and and also it's sort of like a veneration
Mm.
of that as well, which kind of is talking about my spiritual practice sort of aligning and meeting with my art practice.
Yeah,
So it's one
yeah.
thing. And so sometimes it's more literal, where I might be saying a prayer and taking a breath
Mm.
and kind of weaving that into the art making process.
Mhm.
So it's very intentional.
Yeah.
Um, and then I like to make also in installations. So I make discrete
Oh.
objects, images, installations, and then I'm also teaching myself animation. Um, so
You
that's
were talking about an octopus. I think you're
yes,
you're right on that.
yes, I love it. So I have my moon is 1 degree in Gemini, which makes me very creatively restless.
Uh,
So that's why I have all these irons in different fires. I might do 3D stuff for 6 months or a year, and then switch to 2D, and then but I'm 54, so I have decades
yeah.
of my art making practice where you can see the through line over time. It might
Yeah.
look crazy if you just zoom in, but over
Yeah.
time, all of these tentacles will make sense. I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah.
Oh, that's such an interesting point too, because I think I have met a lot of artists who are like that, who are doing, it seems in the moment or in that period of time, they're doing all kinds of different things.
Mhm.
But because the same person with the same feelings, thoughts, experiences is the one that's making it,
Mhm.
you can look back,
Mhm.
over decades of time and think, oh man, I didn't realize I was doing that, but
Yeah.
it's there and it's connecting everything along the way. Even though I feel scattered and I'm like doing all these different things, it actually will make sense one day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. And I think, that's one of those things that we're told to like not do
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm.
Like you should be doing the one thing and doing it over and over and over again, but that's it. Like, don't deviate from that because then you're kind of like, I don't know, watering down your, I don't know, your voice or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like, what do you think about that? Like, what is your thoughts around like having that one thing versus experimenting with a lot of different directions?
I mean, sometimes, to be honest, I've been jealous of people that have the one thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a teacher who said he painted his garage door over and over again for 30 years.
Yeah.
And, maybe there's a comfort in that, I don't know, right? And being able to see the same thing in a new way and bringing some new information to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I do have, like my Eyes of Protection ceramic eye project.
Yeah.
That's the same thing over and over again. But
Yeah.
I make small, hopefully improvements, and they're different each time through each
Yeah.
iteration. So hopefully there's a conversation that builds. But uh, I don't know. I think I'm just too. It's just part of. I'm interested in a lot of different things, and I can't. First of all, too, the rules. Screw the rules of what anybody says you should do or shouldn't do at this point.
Yeah.
Right. I think I don't know. It seems like the rule is to make up whatever works for whatever works for you. I think
Yeah.
that's what works best. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I know a lot of artists who work in a multidisciplinary way, like I do. It just satisfies my restless brain.
Mm.
I think it would feel a little limiting but it might also, they say art. Wait, I think it was Da Vinci that said art uh, lives by constraints and dies by freedom. So maybe
Mm.
doing one thing over and over again for a period of time is good. And then, maybe once that's over, then you can explode and expand into different branches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do love the idea of doing a series or a cohesive body of work. Which I have to do in a few years to get ready for the show. And so that's like the hoping it all comes together part of the conversation. But yeah, I like working in a tactile way, and then I also love drawing. So I just have a lot of creative needs,
Yeah.
and just enjoy different processes.
Something just popped in my head. It's kind of like different languages.
Hmm.
Like you're speaking different languages and you know, because we don't necessarily, a lot of people don't necessarily think of art as a way to communicate. They think, oh, it's, something to decorate my house with, like they may not be a maker and they may not go through that process to know this is a deeper way for me to communicate. So then when you think about having all these different tentacles, like you're speaking to all these different, I don't know, languages, or I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I just think we're all multidimensional beings, and
Sure.
these are. I feel like I live a many layered, multi-tiered reality.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's just a
absolutely.
function of how I experience reality.
That's so cool. I think too, like, I'm very curious. So I feel like you're doing a lot of traditional media and then you've got the animation. Like, how did that come in?
Um, I got an iPad, and I was very resistant to trying digital media. I was kind of a one of the art, kind of like, oh, I'm going to be a snob about it. Digital, what?
Yeah.
And it changed my life. It really helped me level up for presentations, and especially for pitching mural jobs. Like, it was a
Oh,
game
yeah.
changer. And then I just started, trying to teach myself some animation, and it was fun. And I really love tedious tasks. So um, it's no surprise that I'm working at an autism organization, because I feel I don't have a diagnosis, but I know that I have some traits
Yeah.
um, that sort of allow me to do very tedious things, like put 10,000 sequins on something,
Yeah.
or, all these tedious lines. So I really love the tedious process of doing the animation. And it's just been really fun to explore. And I illustrated a book. And so I also learned how to use Procreate to do those
Yeah.
digital illustrations. And I'm still learning. I still consider myself a novice, but it's really fun. It's very easy. And um, I love teaching other people how easy it is too. So it's just a really
Yeah.
fun, different way to explore, and you get immediate results, and it's just.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I kind of had the same experience. I do a lot of digital now.
Mhm.
And that was like I probably started in 2018
Mhm.
and started playing with it then and was like really disappointed because I couldn't do what I wanted to do right off the bat, and it took a while to like kind of get it to do what I wanted it to do. So, when I think about it, I think about it is really kind of a process to kind of learn in its own, I don't know, as a tool.
Mhm.
And then you're talking about doing animation, and it just opens up so many different ways to look at, I guess, imagery or speaking or creating in that different way. Like, what kind of animations are you making?
So, I will say they're embellished drawings more. They're not animations, say in the traditional sense, where there's characters moving.
Sure, sure.
I'm not
No, I mean,
depicting, that.
yeah,
But just exploring the mark making and the movement through that, and incorporating different elements.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just fun.
yeah. That is fun. I love that. So, what would you tell like it might be a hard question, but what would you tell somebody who's going into art or really want to be creative person now? Like, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
I would say just be prepared to support your habit with whatever you need to do to make money, and don't
Yeah.
stop. I've had multiple jobs at one time. When I
Sure.
was after my business closed, um, let's see, 2015 until 2023, 8
Mm.
years. So I probably had 4 jobs at this or more, and odd jobs during that time.
Yeah.
So, the artist has to be creative and figuring out what kind of life they can craft
Yeah.
to allow them to have the time to make their art. And so for me, that was bartending weddings, teaching as an adjunct at UAB,
Yeah.
and taking odd jobs, painting murals, selling art, doing whatever's necessary
Yeah.
to feed your habit. And then the other advice that I've gotten myself, which was helpful because, careers go like this.
Yes, they
Just don't
do.
stop. Just don't stop because the people that stop are never going to progress. And so, as a white woman in her 50s, you know, maybe you'll get recognized in your 70s. So
Mm,
don't stop, keep going. And I think that's the most important part. And just honor your spirit and don't let anybody tell you. Don't I would not be affected by what the other people think. It's
yeah,
really about you and your spirit and your soul. And, if you can sell work, great. If not, then just make it for the,
yeah,
for the world. The
yeah.
world needs your art.
Yes, they do,
Yeah.
especially right now. I feel like this is
Especially
a
right
very important time to be making art and doing something with it.
now.
Um, Great advice. Definitely. I completely agree. I think we don't talk about having to have other jobs in order to be creative people, you
Mhm,
know? I
mhm,
think, I guess there's sort of like this storyline of being discovered
mhm,
and being in a gallery and not having to support yourself in any other kind of way, just having that, being an artist. I don't know if I'm thinking like Andy Warhol or something, but like having a whole career without having to, be a waitress
mhm.
or do teaching or, do these other things. And I guess it's not as glamorous or it doesn't sound like, I don't know, that typical artist, I don't know, like identity or something, but it's a real thing. And I think the majority of artists do have other jobs.
Yeah, only a few artists are lucky enough to not have other jobs. They might
Yeah,
be supported by their spouse or their family, or maybe they're just but it's
sure.
most people have other jobs.
Yeah,
And if you can just accept that, and I think that makes it easier. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and all those other jobs are going to give you opportunities to meet other people and have other opportunities to show or sell your art. So it's all you know,
Sure.
increasing the mycelium of your network.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like getting out in the world and experiencing other people and other environments too helps your creativity
Mhm.
as well. So, I mean, it's almost like if you thought about all those jobs as being like experiments or research for
Mhm.
your art,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
could be, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I love the advice to not give it up or to keep going because I think a lot of people do that. Over time they're like, "Well, I haven't done anything with it," and then you've got your spouses or family or people who are, in the background saying, "Why are you still doing this? Why are you spending money on it? Why are you know, you need to be doing something else with your time." And there's a lot of pressure to stop
Mhm.
and give it up a lot of times.
Mhm.
But I think that's and for me personally, I think talking about it, maybe even with the people around you in a way where you're like, okay, this is part of my mental health,
Mhm.
or this is
That
part of
too. Mhm.
my being,
Mhm.
like I've got to do this, then maybe they'll stop.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like this is kind of my medicine, this is my therapy,
Yeah,
or
absolutely. Yeah.
finding a way to talk about it so that they understand the importance to you versus, okay, you should be doing something else or you need to give that up. That's, a waste of time if you're not. I mean, like, have you had that in your life? Have you ever
Oh,
experienced
of
that?
course. Yeah, my parents have always been, kind of like, "What are you should have been a commercial artist. You should have been this." Constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just you can't listen to those limiting voices.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like, Georgia O'Keeffe painted that huge painting of clouds in her
Yeah.
80s. I think she was in her 80s, and it's like I'm hoping that the best work is ahead of me a decade or 2 from now. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm just getting started. So,
Yeah.
you can't listen to those negative limiting voices, just cut them completely out. They don't belong in our heads.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that is some amazing advice. Where can people find your work? Like, are you showing anywhere? Do you have like online presence?
I have an Instagram and, I do not have gallery representation. I have a solo show at the Gadsden Museum of Art in 2027,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'll be at the Bells Gallery in October of this year in Dothan,
Excellent. Excellent.
and, I'll also be at the Triennial at AVA in Birmingham at the Abrams Engel Institute of the Visual Arts. It's a
Yeah.
group show, and so that's in June. And then, sometimes I don't well, sometimes people will send me images on Instagram to buy work, but you can always people can reach out to me, and I have pop-ups and, small exhibitions, but yeah, got some big
Wow.
shows coming up in the future.
Yeah, you do. That's exciting. I actually interviewed Holly from Bell's Gallery
Mhm,
last season or the
mhm,
season before, I don't know. But
mhm.
that's a really cool gallery, a really cool space.
Yeah, I'm very excited to
Fun.
meet her and to be able to show in that space.
Yeah. So what are you, like, preparing for that, or do you have everything already done?
Oh, heck no. I will work to the last second.
Yeah.
Nothing is ever done until it's sold. I will pry open a painting that I just showed and keep working on it. I worked on it for
Wow.
years, and, so, no, I'm trying to get that body of work wrangled for the show in October, but, yeah, it won't be done until the second I have to pack my car.
That is so awesome. I've never heard that before where someone's like, "I just keep working on it
I
every
will, it's not
time."
done. I feel like the paintings, you're in conversation with them. If
Yeah.
they still have something to say, if they still, whisper and have something more, I'll get in there and try to push and pull a little bit more and see what I
Oh,
can
that's
get
so
out of it.
fun. It's like, "You better get a picture of it now because
It
I'm
might
about to do something to it," you know?
right, it might get worse, often the case before it gets better. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Merrilee, for talking to me today. It's been really fascinating. I think we have talked about some really interesting things that I don't know if I've ever talked with anyone else about. So it's
Oh,
been really
cool.
enlightening.
Wonderful.
And also, before I let you go too, is there anything that we as an art community can do for Studio by the Tracks? Like, are you guys like what is the direction there? Like, are you planning to do
Oh, okay, yeah.
anything or
So our strategy is, evolving in real time.
yeah,
We put out a statement last week, and it's been shared over 500, 600 times, as a response to our funding loss, and
yeah,
so we're definitely, soliciting support from our community, and that could be a $5 a month donation, a $20 a month donation. A lot of times people will donate art supplies to us as well,
mhm,
which we gratefully and graciously
good.
accept. And then we have an annual fundraiser every year in which community artists are asked to donate work. So,
Mhm,
sometimes people reach out to us too and say, I'd like to donate a piece of work to your auction. So
yeah,
that's great too. And then we also love to involve artists in the community, in the studio in the following ways. We have community art nights twice
yeah,
a month that are free and open to anyone. And we love for makers and artists to come and just hang out with us. It's kind of like a third space where everybody
yeah.
gets together and makes art together and remembers how magical that is. And then we also love to have artists in the community teach workshops at the
Oh,
studio. So there are many ways to plug in to the Studio by the Tracks art community, and we have an artist residency also, which is a great way for artists if they either have a place they can stay, because we can't offer housing,
Oh,
so
yes.
it's been offered to people that can avail themselves of being
Yeah.
in Birmingham and Irondale. But we do have an artist residency as well, which artists can apply for. So there's a lot of ways for artists to get in touch with Studio by the Tracks and stay connected and be a
Yeah.
part of our mission.
All right. That's awesome. I've got to like get in there and like, I mean, I want to help because I mean, when I moved to Birmingham, like, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago, that was one of the places that I kept hearing about,
Oh, wow. Mhm.
creative place.
Yeah.
And I would hear about it here and there, and I would be like, what is this place?
Yeah.
And I just visited
Yes.
like a week or two ago
Yeah. Yeah.
for
It's
the
amazing.
very first time, and I was like, this is okay.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
a really cool place.
Thank you. And you have to see it to get it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you
You have to
really
be there,
do.
experience what it's like to be within those walls. It's different. It hits different when you're in the space. Although we're super cute on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, please come see us.
Yeah. And everyone who's listening, you need to get involved and help out. And then,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I'm so worried about like the arts funding and community everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's just so important. And we need to support you guys because you've done so much for the art community as well, and it's kind of like giving back. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Support your
anything we
local
can do. Yeah.
artists. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Art Talk with April. New episodes are out every Tuesday at 6 p.m.